Next of our speakers is Susan Smith, who's a member of our group. She also gave evidence along with Rosa, who is a former Treasurer, at the Census Committee at Scottish Government. You can watch this on YouTube. It's great. I don't know if you're going to touch on this, kind of, Susan, but it was the first time we'd actually saw any form of debate regarding kind of gender ID, and we didn't know that this was going to happen. We thought it was going to be very dry, rock up, kind of talk about stats, etc., and data collection. And who knew? We ended up having a debate on the GRA, on the Census Committee. So, it just shows you how, when you start these conversations, how it can actually go. So, without any further ado, I shall pass you over to Susan.
So I saw a lot of suffragette colours coming in today. So I thought it would be appropriate to start off with a quote from a much greater woman. He said that, "I know that women, once convinced that they are doing what is right, that their rebellion is just, will go on, no matter what the difficulties, no matter what the dangers, so long as there is a woman alive to hold up the flag of rebellion." That, of course, was Emmeline Pankhurst. But on Monday, a group of women, audacious women, some of whom I believe are here with us, took up that flag and dressed some statues in some t-shirts. T-shirts bearing the words, woman, adult, human, female. And in doing so, they proclaimed that the female of the human species has a right to language and to definitions in law, science, and society. A statement that should be uncontroversial. And yet they attracted a predictable barrage of righteous anger from those who seek to deny women this basic, fundamental autonomy. For most of Western history, the definition of the word woman has been clear, if the association's uncomplimentary. Thomas Aquinas said woman was defective and ill-begotten. Scotland's own John Knox wrote, "To promote a woman to bear rule is repugnant to nature. It is the subversion of good order, of all equity and justice." Who would have wanted to be a woman at the height of the witch trials? Or in an age when women had no rights over property, earnings, or even their own children? Who could not vote or attend a university? Our rights are very, very new. Brave women eked out small gains in the 19th century and greater ones in the 20th. But this is nothing within a historical context. My grandparents could recall the era before women's suffrage. But perhaps, in a certain amount of complacency, thinking we've achieved it all, we've done it all, we've forgotten that our infant rights need to be nurtured, protected, and cherished. So the word woman matters because women matter. If we cannot define ourselves and the oppression which women still face on the basis of biology, we cannot fight for ourselves or our sisters. If our language is stolen, our voices are silenced. If we cannot see sex, we cannot see sexism. And we cannot define or defend sexuality. Classifications in the Equality Act, including sex, should enable structural inequalities to be analysed and, when necessary, tackled. So definitions have to be robust and data has to maintain integrity. But instead we see confusion, some deliberate, especially in the conflation of sex with gender identity. Groups whose avowed aim is to remove sex as a protected characteristic in law advise governments, public bodies and authorities. And FOIs reveal that they have given faulty advice to, among others, the police and the NHS. The impact on women in law and changes to the law should weigh as heavy on government as the rights of any other protected group. But in making this case, and asking for debate, women have been called hateful. We have been vilified for objecting to dehumanising, misogynistic language which reduces us to organs and bodily functions, and are told that identity is the true cause of oppression, as though women through millennia just chose to be second-class citizens. Our existence is being redefined without scientific justification, and seismic social changes are being waved through without evidence, while attempts to research or understand sociological phenomena are shut down. Ironically, in our secular age, faith, not fact, is being codified into policy. And those who object to it, of course, are today's equivalent of heretics. John Morley has commented that where it's a duty to worship the sun, it's pretty sure to be a crime to examine the laws of heat. As Maggie said, we've tried to shake off the shackles of the gender prison. Yet today, the arguments that stunted women's liberation are presented as progressive. In 2018, a children's book, Jack, Not Jackie, was published aimed at 4-year-olds, which suggested that if a little girl was clever, adventurous and brave, then she was really a boy. Crass gendered stereotypes are celebrated, rather than condemned as reductive and regressive. Feminism should be the battle for women's rights. That does not mean that we oppose the rights of anyone else, especially any other vulnerable group, any more than campaigners for disability rights are opposed to the rights of able-bodied people. And nobody would ever suggest that of any other campaigners, but they do seem to aim at quite a the only group who is constantly expected to put the interests of others before our own. There's a warped interpretation of intersexualism out there, which centres feminism around personal choice. And this feminism can be greedy and selfish. It validates desire above community. It's the antithesis of inclusive. It ignores vulnerable women who are most at risk of exclusion or self-exclusion, and it abdicates responsibility for the demographic feminists are supposed to serve. And contrary to all the evidence, which shows that rates of assault rise in unisex facilities, some seek to jettison the single-sex provisions which are supposed to ameliorate wrongs and offer women protection. It's been said many times, but it's still a shocker that in Britain today, 2 women a week are murdered by a current or former partner. Rape prosecutions are plummeting, even as reported cases rise. Women have still not achieved equality of representation in politics, and in the workplace they continue to battle sexism, especially the expectations associated with pregnancy and childcare. 1/3 of girls said that they had been subjected to harassment in a public place whilst wearing a school uniform. Cases of sexual assault in schools have doubled in recent years. Estimates suggest there are 10 assaults, including 1 rape per day in UK schools. Children are exposed to the toxic effects of ever more brutal misogynistic pornography, and social media platforms are an especially poisonous place for young girls. And yet, as Maggie has said, when LGBT school guidance was published, it was enthusiastically adopted by many Scottish councils. They, the government and the Children's Commissioner, failed to even consider the evident potential for damage to girls. They did not consider girls' rights to privacy or dignity. They did not address concerns that girls' sports could be eviscerated or that girls' safety would be compromised. It was left to the fabulous women and girls in Scotland to do the equality impact assessment. That clearly lays bare the shocking safeguarding implications. As Maggie said, this affects boys too, and I'm a mother with sons, and in a perfect world, I would want to eliminate male violence and toxic masculinity, and a lot of this wouldn't matter anymore. And I want to protect my boys too. And I understand that male violence hurts men, actually hurts men disproportionately, especially those who don't conform to masculine expectations. But we do not make our sons safer by sacrificing our daughters.
Yeah.
And if any movement claims that equality can only be achieved by putting women at risk, undermining their status, or driving them from the public sphere, we should question their motivation, especially if they reinforce that message by intimidation and the threat of violence. But I think there are grounds for optimism. We know, having met with many MSPs recently, that they are aware of these issues and they don't want to make bad laws. A great number are listening, and we would urge women to continue to contact them with their concerns, highlighting the need to strengthen the rights of women and girls and the potential conflicts between the GRA and the Equality Act. Bring your personal testimony to them. Tell them about your fears for your children, or the implication for vulnerable patients in hospitals, or the trauma potentially faced by women in rape shelters or survivors of domestic abuse. And we would also encourage you to constantly challenge any use of gender identity instead of sex by public bodies or councils. And Murray, Blackburn, Mackenzie have some wonderful resources on the councils who do this, so you should check that out and write to them, and remind them of their public sector equality duty and of the law. Do not let self-ID happen by stealth. And we do believe we can influence this debate. As Marion said, we were delighted with what happened at the Census Committee, by the fact that so many MSPs were so alive to this issue, and the fact that there were submissions from so many quarters, which also brought similar concerns to the table. And I think we're optimistic that these were all positively received. Also, as some of you will be aware, the Scottish Prison Service have recently indicated they would review their policy. This, of course, was co-written with Scottish Trans Alliance and stated that prisoners should be housed in the estate of their self-identified gender and searched by officers in accordance with this. The upshot, of course, being that several high-profile, male-bodied, violent offenders were placed in women's prisons and could demand that intimate searches be carried out by female guards. The Equality and Human Rights Impact Assessment carried out at the time did not consider the implication for female prisoners and officers. So we are thankful that the Scottish Prison Service have acknowledged the need to address this and consider the impact on women's inmates. But it should never really have come to that.
No.
And this, of course, is the reality of the erosion of women's rights. We're not here to quibble about toilets. Although some would rather keep the focus on this, perhaps because it trivialises us and our concerns. And we're also certainly not here to create trouble for those who have battled crippling gender dysphoria, and yes, do need and deserve legal protections. And we know that many of our trans allies have also faced abuse, often from the very people who claim to protect them. No, we are here because a policy of unregulated self-ID is so replete with danger and will cause material harm to so many. We've only to look to Canada, where men use human rights tribunals to persecute women who refuse to provide intimate services, or who try to shut down rape crisis shelters. We are here because some seek to shut women out of this conversation, while our rights are co-opted. We are here because women's boundaries are being attacked, especially those of lesbians who are told that their sexuality is an exclusionary fetish and they have a duty to include males in their dating pool. We are here because women across the globe are still abused and oppressed because of their biology. The infanticide of females, FGM, forced marriage, coercive rapes, death in menstrual huts, denial of education, healthcare, reproductive or property rights are just some of the injustices women continue to face wholly and solely because of inescapable biology. And we are here because we want, need and deserve equal right. We are here because we should not need to beg for our rights. And we are here because we cannot betray those who went before us, and certainly not those who will come after. So through the ages, I believe that courage still calls to courage, and we cannot now deny its voice. So we must all take up that flag of rebellion, take hands, and stand for women.